The purpose of this recording is to describe the effects of wave absorption and reflection that occur as sound waves travel through a sound field. Discussion topics include sound absorption, sound reflection, reverberation, classroom acoustics. In addition to the predictable change in sound intensity described by the inverse square law, sound propagation is affected by a number of phenomena that affect the speed, direction, intensity, and phase of the sounds. These phenomena are due to the properties of the medium through which the sound wave travels and the presence of the boundaries of the space within which the sound is traveling. The boundaries of the space are the surrounding walls and other obstacles that affect the way that sound waves travel. The main phenomena that we will discuss affecting sound wave behavior in space are the absorption and reflection of sound energy. The wave effects that we will discuss are limited to acoustic waves and are referred to as acoustic effects. The relative impact of various acoustic effects on the sound wave depends on the type of space in which the sound wave is propagating. The two basic types of acoustic spaces are open space and closed space. Acoustic effects that affect sound wave behavior in space include absorption and reflection. A sound wave propagating through a medium will ultimately lose all its energy because of sound absorption by the medium and the surrounding boundaries. Sound absorption by the medium is the result of the internal friction within the medium, which converts sound energy into heat as sound passes through a medium. Sound absorption by space boundaries is the result of the transfer of sound energy from one medium to another as sound arrives at the boundary between two media. Thus, the resulting loss of sound energy in a medium can be due to internal absorption and external absorption. Internal absorption is the dominant factor in sound energy dissipation in open spaces and in large sports arenas. External absorption is affected by the size and physical properties of the surfaces surrounding the space within which the sound wave propagates. External absorption is the dominant factor in the sound decrease in enclosed spaces, such as auditoriums, theaters, living rooms, classrooms, and audiometric booths. The ability of the medium and its boundaries to absorb the energy of sound waves is characterized by a quantity called the absorption coefficient. For indoor environments, sound travels much shorter distances and is mostly absorbed by the surfaces surrounding the sound field. In the case of a sound arriving at a space boundary, the absorption coefficient for the boundary can be calculated. In this equation, I is the sound intensity arriving at the boundary, and I sub S is the amount of energy absorbed by this area. The absorption coefficient varies from 0 to 1 and depends on the frequency of the sound wave and the properties of the boundary. Properties of the boundary include the thickness and structure of the walls, the amount of wall surface, and the type of wall material. For example, sound arriving at a soft material, such as a thick carpet, would be absorbed more easily than the sound arriving at a hard surface, such as a tile floor. As a general rule, sound absorption increases with sound frequency. However, this dependence is affected by the presence of impurities, the shape of the barriers, or objects that are made of this material, and their ability to vibrate. Notice this table showing an upholstered seat, which is made of soft porous material, has much higher absorption coefficients at all frequencies than glass, which is a hard, non-porous material. Also notice that the glass has a higher absorption coefficient for low frequency sounds compared with high frequency sounds, which is the reverse of the upholstered seat, in which the absorption coefficient is higher for high frequency sounds. Glass and other objects that can vibrate easily can absorb more low frequency energy than high frequency energy. Porous materials such as concrete can become less absorptive when its surface is painted, since the paint becomes an additional, less porous and more reflective layer on its surface. When a sound wave reaches a boundary, part of its energy is absorbed, as previously discussed, and the remaining part of the energy is reflected back into the sound field. The reflected sound energy within an enclosed space is called reverberation. Large spaces with reflective walls, such as sports arenas and old churches, will produce a lot of reverberation, while small spaces with walls covered with absorbing material, such as audiometric test booths and anechoic rooms, will produce very little reverberation. A common measure of the amount of reverberation is the reverberation time. Reverberation time is the amount of time needed for a sound pressure to decrease 1,000 times or by 60 dB after the sound source ceases its operation. The reverberation time depends on the volume and shape of the space and reflective properties of the surrounding boundaries. It can be calculated using the Sabine equation, named in honor of the American physicist Wallace Sabine, who experimentally derived the formula. In the Sabine equation, K is a constant that depends on the temperature of the air. RT is reverberation time in seconds. V is the volume of the room or space in meters cubed, and A is the total absorption of the space boundaries. The total absorption is calculated where S sub 1 through S sub n are the surfaces of the walls, floor, and ceiling surrounding the space, and alpha sub 1 through alpha sub n are the absorption coefficients of the individual surfaces. A total absorption of space boundaries, also called absorption, is frequently expressed in units called sabins, reported in meters squared. Note also that reverberation time changes with the frequency of sound, since the absorption coefficients of a space boundary are frequency dependent. Also note that the Sabine equation was experimentally derived, and it does not work well equally for all listening situations. It predicts RT well for rooms with highly reflective walls, but is less accurate for rooms that are highly damped. Other theoretically derived estimates of RT, which work well for highly damped rooms, include the Norris-Ehring equation and the Millington-Set equation. Large empty classrooms or smaller spaces with a lot of highly reflective surfaces have an average RT of about 1 to 2 seconds. These rooms are frequently referred to as live rooms. An empty tiled bathroom and a high school cafeteria are examples of live rooms. Medieval churches, domes, and large warehouses may have live rooms on the order of 3 to 5 seconds or more. Rooms with a lot of highly absorbing surfaces and soft furniture may have average RTs as low as 0.3 to 0.5 seconds. Such rooms are often called dead rooms. Control rooms and recording studios are generally dead rooms, so the monitored recorded music is not affected by the acoustic properties of the room. Libraries also tend to have small RTs to limit the background noise level for reading and studying purposes. Of great importance in hearing science are the acoustics surrounding the design of classrooms. Classroom environments in which there is a high level of background noise from heating, ventilating, and air-conditioned systems, electronic instructional equipment, multi-talker noise, and so forth are not conducive to learning. A high level of reverberation has a negative effect on the learning environment since it can enhance the background noise and additionally affect the perception of a teacher's voice when in a quiet classroom. Classrooms with a high RT have reflected speech sounds that overlap and mask the teacher's voice. This decreases the ability of all children to hear a clear signal, and it negatively affects their academic achievement. An American national standard suggests that the RT in core learning spaces should be less than 0.6 seconds for smaller classrooms and less than 0.7 seconds for moderate-sized classrooms. RTs for larger classrooms are not specified. However, the standard lists guidelines for the control of reverberation via the percentage of wall, floor, and ceiling space that should contain absorbent materials and guidelines for the types of materials that should be used. In summary, all of the energy in a sound wave is lost due to sound absorption. This can be quantified and expressed as the absorption coefficient. The remaining part of the sound wave that is not absorbed is reflected back into the sound field. Reflected sound energy within an enclosed space is called reverberation. A high level of reverberation has a negative effect on the learning environment since it can enhance the background noise and additionally affect the perception of a teacher's voice even in a quiet classroom. Later,